Discovered how a touching encounter with a homeless girl revealed the CEO's amazing new purpose. In the heart of Chicago, David, a high-flying CEO, was drowning in his corporate success. As he hurried through the frigid night, his tailored coat offered little warmth against the biting cold. Profits and deadlines loomed large in his mind, eclipsing the joys of family and purpose. He felt more like a cog in an unforgiving machine, racing from one meeting to another, leaving behind laughter and love rendered distant by his relentless ambition. That night, something shifted. As he turned down an alley tucked away from the busy streets, his eyes fell upon a ragged blanket flapping against a graffiti-covered wall. Beneath it, bundled tightly, were two small figures. Curiosity piqued, David approached and discovered a scrappy little girl, no more than 10, huddling protectively around her tiny brother. Her big, hopeful eyes sparkled in the half-light, defying the bleakness around them. "Sir, can you help us?" Her voice was surprisingly strong, filling the air like the warm glow of a flame in the winter darkness. David, caught off guard, felt a constriction in his chest. Her spirit, fierce yet gentle, lit up the shadows of his heart. Despite the whispering doubt in his mind, he found himself asking if they'd eaten. When Lily nodded shyly, he dashed to the nearest food truck and bought them a steaming meal. As he handed it over, her eyes widened, sparkling with gratitude. It was an interaction that felt like a lifetime's worth of connection in just a few moments. Returning to his grand penthouse later that night, the absence of warmth was palpable. David walked through the door, and the hollow laughter of his children echoed from their screens. He felt the familiar pang of guilt wash over him as he slumped onto the couch, gripping his phone. Business news flickered on the screen, but all he could think of was the girl Lily who dreamed of being an artist, her sketches of vibrant flowers and wild skies. Before he could gather his thoughts, an ominous email popped up. A board meeting was scheduled for Monday, where they'd discuss cutting funding for local shelters. Panic surged through him. With profit margins in mind, the very place where Lily might find support could vanish overnight, all for the sake of shareholder greed. A wave of guilt washed over him. Who had he become? Torn between his loyalty to a company focused on the bottom line and the urgent needs of vulnerable families, David was left grappling with a storm of emotions. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In the boardroom that Monday, the harsh buzz of fluorescent lights felt like they were illuminating the tension in the air. The freezing winds outside howled against the glass, echoing David's growing unease. He could almost feel Lily's hopeful eyes on him. Suddenly, fueled by a fire ignited during his encounter with her, David stood up, surprising his colleagues and, most importantly, himself. Cutting these funds isn't just wrong, it's heartless. The words tumbled out before he could second-guess himself. Gasps and murmurs ricocheted as he passionately argued for corporate responsibility, igniting a dialogue no one saw coming. In that moment, he began to see that true success was not locked behind conference room walls or tall buildings. It lay in the connections he would start to nurture, both with his family and within his community. With each passing day, he felt the pull towards the vibrant, joyful life he'd almost forgotten home held for him. Yet, just as he started on this path, the news hit him like a punch in the gut. Lily was unwell, and the art program, a dream she held tightly, was on the brink of shutting down due to funding cutbacks. Standing at the crossroads once more, David found himself torn between his dual responsibilities. What choice would he make, not just for his career but for the future of a little girl who had awakened his long-dormant soul? David sat in his car, the engine idling as snowflakes danced into the night. He felt the weight of his decision pressing down like the winter chill around him. On one side, there was a secure job that promised success and admiration. On the other, the chance to help a little girl who saw beauty in a world that had largely ignored her. The thought of Lily, bundled up in that alley, consumed his mind. He took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm brewing within him. Should he really risk everything for a girl he barely knew? But the more he hesitated, the clearer his heart became. Lily had shown him a glimpse of what truly mattered: compassion, connection, hope. She needed him. Pushing open the car door, the cold air nipped at his skin, but it felt different now. It felt like a spark of determination igniting inside him. He was done standing idly by while companies made decisions that obliterated the dreams of the vulnerable. This wasn't just about Lily anymore. It was about those countless children and families who relied on the support of shelters and programs to survive. Taking a moment to gather himself, he pulled out his phone and dialed a number he had almost forgotten. The line rang only once before a familiar voice answered. David. What's up? Kevin, his childhood friend and now a community organizer, sounded cheerful but curious. Kevin, I need your help. It's urgent, David said, his voice steadied by conviction. He told Kevin about the board meeting, the funding cuts, and most importantly, Lily. The weight of the issue drew Kevin's energy into focus. David, this is serious. We need to mobilize. If we can gather some community support, we might change their minds. I can help you set up a meeting with the local coalition. Can we do it before they make a decision? David asked, heart racing. Absolutely. Let us get to work. As David hung up, adrenaline replaced the chill of unease. He had a mission now. That evening, he put together a presentation outlining the benefits of community funding, the mental health impacts, the stories of resilience, and most importantly, the lives that could be saved. This wasn't just numbers in a spreadsheet, it was hope. The next days were a whirlwind of late-night meetings and heartfelt discussions. David met with parents, artists, and social workers. Each was a testament to the power of arts in healing and growth. He learned stories that made his heart ache, stories that solidified his resolve. They painted a vivid picture of what should not be lost. Finally, the day of the board meeting arrived. David stood at the head of the long, polished table, filled with faces he had known for years, faces he knew would stand against emotional pleas for profits. But today was different. Today, he felt courage well up inside him, fortifying his heart. When he began his presentation, he saw the cold glances soften just a bit. He painted a portrait of Lily and others like her, who were counting on the kindness and support of their community. He shared the raw truth: every cut is a dream snuffed out, hope extinguished. As silence wrapped around the room, David's hands trembled slightly. Then, reminiscent of the spark in Lily's eyes, he spoke the words he'd mulled over countless nights: we can't put a price on hope. It's time for us to be the light in these children's lives. And just as he breathed in, sharing a personal reflection about his own children, he noticed a moistness beginning in his own eyes. His voice broke. What would you want for your children? If they faced a life like Lily's, wouldn't you fight for them? Suddenly, there was a shift. A glance exchanged between two board members. An understanding passed by, and David felt the tide beginning to turn. As the room held its breath, David realized that the true battle wasn't just against budget cuts, but against indifference itself. He felt unsure yet determined, ready to fight for every child out there the same way he would for his own, but just then, the buzz of an incoming notification broke the silence. It was an update from his phone. Heart sinking, David's stomach knotted as he read the headline: Vandalism at local shelter, art supplies for kids destroyed. Would the shelter hold on? Would Lily's dream crumble before his very eyes? As David's heart raced with worry, the new urgency surged within him. The fight was only just beginning. Would he be able to save not just the funding but the very dreams behind it? With the board members' eyes fixed on him, David could barely process the chaos swirling in his mind. The buzzing phone felt more like a ticking clock now, a reminder that time was slipping away. He swallowed hard, trying to regain focus. The presentation could only take them so far. He needed action, and he needed it fast. "Look, I know some of you may not see this as a priority," he began, his voice firm yet pleading. "But we have a responsibility, no, a duty to protect the most vulnerable among us. This isn't just about numbers on a balance sheet. It's about human lives." He glanced at the board, searching for signs of empathy. There seemed to be a flicker of recognition in a few faces, but he needed more than flickers. He needed fuel. There was a man at the corner of the table, Roberts, a longtime member who always seemed indifferent. Today, though, he seemed to be squirming in his seat. David seized the moment. "Roberts, I remember your comment about the arts program being just a luxury in tough times. Do you still believe that? Think about your kids, your family. Are their dreams just luxuries too?" David's words hung in the air like the soft tolling of a bell. A slight crack in Robert's steely facade appeared, and David pressed on, ready to ride the wave of uncertainty. After the meeting, he hurried outside, his breath visible in the frigid air. He needed to find Kevin. They had to respond to the vandalism quickly, raise awareness, mobilize the community. They needed to remind everyone, especially the board, just how much was at stake. "Kevin!" David shouted as he spotted him leaning against a lamppost, scrolling through his phone. "Did you see the news? We need to act now before it's too late." "What's the plan?" Kevin asked, his eyebrows knitted in concern. David took a deep breath, shaking off the urge to panic. "We need to hold a community rally, get the media involved. If we can show everyone the impact of losing that shelter, I think we can reignite the board's priorities." Kevin nodded, his expression turning serious. "It's going to take all of us. We need artists, parents, anyone who cares about these kids. Let us get on social media, let us make some noise." As they hurried back to Kevin's office, ideas erupted between them, like fireworks igniting hope. They set up a meeting in a nearby community center, inviting all stakeholders, artists, volunteers, and even kids to share their stories. It felt like a storm was brewing, but this time it was one of unity and purpose. That evening, as David returned home, he felt a mix of anxiety and excitement swirling within him. His children greeted him at the door, full of energy. They showed him their drawings, busy with imaginative ideas that flickered with life. For a moment, joy overwhelmed him, but as he tucked them in that night, the image of Lily lingered in his mind. She deserved the same joy. She deserved dreams alongside his own children. At that moment, he made a silent promise. Not just to Lily, but to every child dreaming of the impossible. Days passed, and the rally quickly gained traction. Social media lit up with stories, images of the little artists and their projects. Local news stations caught wind, and the message resonated with a wider audience than David had imagined. But just as hope seemed to grow, a message popped up on David's phone, jarring him from his reverie. It was from the shelter. They'd been notified of possible further cuts as backlash for the vandalism. What would he do now? Would everything they fought for crumble under this new threat? As darkness returned with the evening sky, David's heart ached with urgency. He could sense the battle was far from over, and the fight was about to escalate. Would he be able to keep the light shining amidst the looming shadows? The following morning, David sat at his kitchen table, coffee in hand, staring at his phone. The glow of the screen illuminated his worried face, and the messages felt heavier than ever. He glanced at his kids playing in the living room, their laughter ringing through the house, and a pang of guilt tugged at him. For every innocent giggle filling his home, there were dozens of kids like Lily facing uncertainty outside of it. As he scrolled through social media, David noticed a live feed from the community center where they had planned the rally. Many faces from the neighborhood filled the screen, holding signs with messages of hope and resistance. But amidst the positivity, he caught glimpses of shadows, people huddled at the edges, watching, perhaps unsure of how to join in. He felt a spark ignite within him. Maybe we need to go beyond just a rally, he murmured to himself. We need a way to bring these people and give them a voice. With newfound determination, David grabbed his phone and sent a message to Kevin, suggesting they organize not a rally alone, but a community open forum, where everyone, particularly those affected by the cuts, could come and share their stories. He felt his heart race at the thought. This could be the moment they humanize the statistics, bring real faces to the board's table. Later that day, David and Kevin met up at the community center, a hub alive with buzz. Artists set up their displays, children practiced performances, and parents mingled, sharing whispers about their hopes and fears. Tentative smiles warmed the atmosphere, but David could feel an undercurrent of anxiety. "Are you ready for this?" Kevin asked, his brow furrowed. "Ready as I'll ever be," David replied, taking a deep breath. "I just hope this works." As they prepared for the open forum, a small girl, no older than 7, approached them. Her hair was tangled, her clothes worn and patched. David's heart sank. He recognized her from the Shelter program. Her wide, innocent eyes reflected a childhood lost amidst adult struggles. "Are you going to help our art club?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. He knelt to her level, meeting her gaze. "Yes, absolutely. We're going to fight for you and everyone else who needs it." "Promise?" she whispered. He nodded, yet inside he felt shaky. Could he really promise? The weight of her trust crushed against his chest, and moments like this felt too heavy a burden to bear. But he couldn't turn away now. Just as David was about to say something more, he noticed a commotion near the entrance. A few older kids had arrived, some from the neighborhood, but others were affiliated with the shelter. They mingled awkwardly at first, unsure of their acceptance, sparking whispers and glances. "Hey, let's make sure everyone feels welcome," David called out, rallying his own nerves. "We all have a story, and everyone's welcome to share theirs tonight. Let's turn this moment into a celebration together." As they launched into the open forum, voices began to pour out. Stories flowed like rivers, tales of struggles, dreams, laughter, and hope. David listened intently. Each story was another thread weaving them together, knitting a fabric of community, but just as the message of unity began to resonate, David's phone buzzed again, and he froze. It was a message from the board, notifying him of an emergency meeting. The stakes had escalated rapidly. They were looking for a way to cut deeper. His heart sank. How would he bring this momentum to the board when they were so dead set on their own agendas? Would the voices gathered here tonight be enough to shift the tide? The weight of responsibility crashed over him, but amidst the chaos, he felt the flicker of the girl's eyes in his mind. A promise had been made and he realized he couldn't back down now. Tomorrow would require all of his strength, courage, and perhaps some unexpected alliances. But as the stories continued flooding in, one question loomed over him: would the truth be enough to change hardened hearts? The open forum rolled on, with emotions spilling out like the colors splashed across the community center's gallery walls. Laughter mixed with the raw intensity of shared pain, creating a beautiful, chaotic symphony of voices. David felt his heart swell as people, one after another, revealed their truths. Each narrative became a brick in the foundation of collective hope, yet an insistent beat of worry echoed in the back of his mind. As he scanned the room, he caught sight of Lily, the little girl. She sat cross-legged on the floor, entranced as a nearby artist painted vivid illustrations of community life. David's promise to her tugged at him like a fragile tether. "We will make a difference," he thought fiercely, clenching his fists in resolve. That feeling nearly shattered when a voice rose above the gathering. It was Laura, a single mother from the shelter, her voice trembling but steady. "They think we're just statistics," she began, her gaze piercing through the crowd. "But we're real. I'm real. My kids are real. Every day is a fight and I'm exhausted." A few supportive murmurs echoed in the room, but the tension was palpable as she continued. We came here hoping you would hear us, but what happens when you leave? Will you still speak for us? Will you press the board? Or will we just fade back into the shadows? David felt a shiver crawl down his spine. Her words were a challenge, a plea, shrouded in vulnerability. Just how deeply had he committed to this cause? He barely even knew the depths of the struggles the people stood before him faced. It was one thing to organize, a far different one to truly understand. That he felt Kevin's hand reassuringly squeeze his shoulder, grounding him. The weight of responsibility hung even heavier now. He couldn't let them down. Swallowing hard, he stepped forward, opening his mouth to address the crowd, heart racing. I promise I will be your voice. His voice rang through the room, now brimming with expectation. But I can't do this alone. I need you. Your stories, the real stories, are what will change hearts and minds. Together, we can reach the board, and together we can show them the truth behind what they deem as mere numbers. You aren't numbers, you are families, children, dreams waiting to blossom. A faint light flickered in the eyes of some as they nodded, gathering their courage. The atmosphere shifted, sparks of hope igniting a sense of unity. But it was far from over. He knew that facing the board tomorrow might break some of those fragile connections. Then, like a sudden gust of wind, doubt swept in. Were his words meaningful enough? Were they enough to forge those broken systems? The urgency to act intensified, and for a moment, David felt frozen, trapped between two worlds. Outside the hall, a group of young adults had gathered, glancing in with hesitant interest. They seemed disconnected, hovering at the outskirts of understanding and support. David's heart sank. They had to be part of this growing community, but how could he get them in? He turned to Kevin, brushing back panic. We need to reach them, those kids on the outside looking in. It has to be more than just us standing up here. Kevin nodded, determination in his eyes. Let us break down those barriers, David. We need something more to welcome them in, a way to show them they aren't alone. Just then, a rusty bell rang from the back of the hall, echoing off the walls, interrupting their thoughts. David glanced at the source. An elderly man, dressed in a well-worn jacket, stood holding the bell, silently hinting for attention. Can I share a story? He asked softly, his voice trembling with age and authority. A murmur of anticipation swept through the room. David nodded, feeling the atmosphere shift yet again. In this moment, as another voice prepared to rise, he realized the community was growing stronger. But with every story shared, the urgency to meet the board pressed heavily, almost unbearably, against his chest. What other stories waited to be told, and how would they alter the fate of those he had promised to protect? The questions swirled in his mind, igniting both anxiety and hope. Tomorrow would demand not just courage but an entirely new outlook. What would be the final outcome when voices collided with indifference? Would David remain strong enough to lead them through the storm? The moment of stillness was electric, wrapped in the promise of the man's story. He cleared his throat, the sound both fragile and powerful, and the crowd leaned in closer, hanging on every word. My name is Frank, he began, his voice quivering. I've lived here for over 50 years in this very community. I've seen it all, the joy, the sorrow, and the struggles that weave into the fabric of our lives. David felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Frank's eyes connected with him, the weight of years and experience reflected in the flicker of those deep-set blues. Many years ago, I lost my wife, and with her, I lost everything. My home, my job, my purpose. I ended up alone, living on the streets for nearly a decade. A thick silence fell over the room, as if time itself had paused to absorb his pain, but then came the shift. But here's what I learned, Frank said, his voice gaining strength. It wasn't the loss that defined me, but the connections I made along the way. I found family in strangers, a sense of belonging in this community. I came to understand that every person has a story, a path that deserves to be recognized. We are not just lost souls, we are part of a greater tapestry, woven together by shared experiences. Several heads nodded in agreement, and David felt a swell of emotion, a flicker of hope igniting in the air. A child giggled from the back, breaking the tension, and then a round of soft laughter spread through the crowd. Yes, we struggle, but we also laugh. We dream. Frank wiped a tear from his cheek, and so did David, caught in the storm of his feelings. As Frank continued, sharing tales of kindness from unexpected places and the way generosity had transformed his darkest days into moments of light, David could see the young adults outside stepping closer, drawn by the warmth of his voice. They were hungry for connection, and Frank was casting a lifeline. With each passing moment, the urgency for action crystallized in David's mind. He could feel the responsibility pulsing in his veins. He would not let this opportunity slip away. It's not about us, he whispered to Kevin, urgency lacing each word. We can't just talk. We need to involve them. Let us create an event, something that can pull everyone together. An art show? Music? Food? Kevin's eyes lit up, and the energy in the room began to shift. David could almost see the gears turning, new ideas blending in real time. We can show them that art and stories connect us, that each voice matters. We can get Frank and others to share their stories alongside artists. Let us call it Voices of the Unseen. Kevin exclaimed, practically vibrating with excitement. A night where we all share our journeys. We can invite the board, and we can invite the community. Everyone. The crowd erupted in whispers, excitement bubbling in the air like soda fizzing in a glass. David's heart raced. Could this be the answer? Would it bridge the gap between their community and those lost on the streets? He could see the young adults responding, nodding, their skepticism melting into intrigue. Frank! David shouted, his voice breaking through the chatter. Are you with us? Will you share your story at Voices of the Unseen? Frank's eyes widened, and he nodded slowly, tears glistening once more. I would be honored. As that single phrase hung in the air, hope and determination enveloped everyone. David felt the weight on his shoulders lift just slightly. Together, with every shared story, they would form an unbreakable bond, a foundation of resilience. But as the meeting moved on, a shadow flitted across David's mind. How would he ensure this event touched every heart? What if their voices weren't enough to persuade the board? He took a deep breath, facing those gathered, feeling their trust, their anticipation. The shift was clear, there was power in unity. But beneath the joy, the whisper of doubt still lingered, and as he looked at the faces around him, he realized the hardest part was yet to come. Tomorrow is just a start, he thought. We need to be ready for everything. And as the meeting began to wrap up, he couldn't shake the feeling. This was more than just an event. It was a turning point, a chance to change everything. What would happen when their stories reached the board's ears? Would they truly listen, or would their resolve fade like distant echoes? The following day crackled with energy. David paced back and forth in the small community center room, his mind lit up like the city skyline at night. He could barely focus. The fledgling idea of Voices of the Unseen pulsed in his veins, but beneath that excitement loomed uncertainty. David glanced at the clock. The board meeting was coming sooner than anticipated. Kevin entered, jittery with caffeine, and slid into a chair. You good? He asked, glancing around at the hastily gathered notes and flyers. Yeah, just I can't stop thinking about how to really pull this off, David replied, running a hand through his hair. We've got Frank on board, and I know the stories will make an impact, but what if it isn't enough? Kevin leaned back, arms crossed, deep in thought. We can prepare. Let us get a few other speakers, people who've been through it and come out stronger. Maybe we showcase their art? Put it right there for the board to see? Just then, the door creaked open, and in walked a girl, no older than 11, with dirt-smudged cheeks and tangled hair peeking out from beneath a faded baseball cap. She hesitated, glancing around with wide, innocent eyes before taking a tentative step forward. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. David and Kevin exchanged confused looks, then turned their attention to her. "Hi there," David said gently. "What's your name?" "Ella," she replied, shifting her weight, still unsure. "What brings you here, Ella?" Kevin asked, leaning forward. "I heard about your event. The one for stories?" Her eyes sparkled, hope mixing with uncertainty. I have a story." Both David and Kevin exchanged looks that conveyed a rush of concern and curiosity. "Of course. We'd love to hear it," David said, offering her a seat. Ella swallowed hard and took a breath. "I live with my mom. We don't have a home right now. We stay in shelters sometimes, and sometimes we sleep in the park," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "But I draw. I draw all the time." She pulled a crinkled sketch out of her pocket, revealing a breathtaking pencil drawing of a tree, its branches sprawling magnificently. David leaned in closer, captivated. "This is incredible, Ella. You have real talent." "Thanks," she mumbled but continued. "I was wondering if I could share my drawings at your event. They tell my story. They tell about how I feel sometimes. I feel like I'm invisible, you know?" David's heart twisted. He could almost feel the weight of her words swirling in the air, drawing them closer together. This girl, brave enough to step forward, could be the key. "Our event is all about sharing those stories, Ella. You'll have a real voice there. It'll be powerful." "Yes." Kevin chimed in, excitement returning. "With your art, you can help people see the beauty behind every struggle. You have the chance to touch the board's hearts." Ella's face lit up. "Really? You think so?" David nodded. "Absolutely. You can be part of Voices of the Unseen. It's not just for grown-ups. You belong there." As Ella smiled, the hope in the room shifted, transforming doubt into determination. This wasn't just an event anymore, it was a movement. David felt the swell of unity returning, like a tide creeping in, rising with each new possibility, but deep down, the whisper of doubt still lurked. What if they failed? What if the board chose to ignore the heart of the stories being shared? Would Ella's brave voice be drowned out in the cacophony of indifference? "Let us get to work," David said, rallying his energy. "We need to make sure everyone hears Ella and Frank and every voice that matters, including those that haven't been heard yet." As they began to outline the details for the art display, David realized he wasn't just fighting for a cause anymore. He was fighting for each person, for their stories to matter. But time was dwindling, and questions loomed ahead. Would the board understand? Would they listen, really listen, when faced with such raw emotion? And as the day unfolded, an overwhelming sense of urgency pushed them forward. Would they find a way to bridge the divide that kept them separated from the hearts of their community? Would they truly unite the unseen? There was so much still at stake. The next few days flew by like leaves carried by a brisk autumn wind. David, Kevin, Ella, and Frank poured their hearts into planning Voices of the Unseen. Ideas bounced around the small meeting room like a wild game of ping-pong. As they brainstormed, David felt the weight of responsibility growing heavier. They needed to amplify the message, to reach people beyond their immediate circle. "We should use social media," Kevin suggested. "Get the community involved. It could be a platform for others to share their stories." "Good idea." Ella chimed in, her enthusiasm infectious. "I can share my drawings online. Maybe even do a live drawing during the event." David's heart swelled with pride. This wasn't just about one little girl anymore, it was about a community coming together. But lurking beneath the excitement was that nagging doubt. The board met once a month, and in just days they'd be listening to their proposal. Would they even see the value? After all, the stories were raw and unfiltered. Would they hear the pain and hope laced through each experience? As the team finalized the details, Frank's stories began to take shape. He shared tales from his past moments of staggering loss and glimmers of hope. David could see the passion in his eyes, and it fueled the fire within him. Yes. This is what they needed. Each story was a thread, weaving a tapestry that illustrated the shared struggles of many. They show everyone that no one is truly unseen. On a bright Saturday afternoon, they set up in the community center. Ella hung her artwork proudly on the walls, each piece telling a different chapter of her life. David stood back for a moment, caught off guard by the sheer vulnerability on display. It was beautiful. It was raw. "Ella, this is incredible," he said, looking at her. "You have a gift. I can't wait until tonight." But as the hour approached, David's heart began to race. The crowd trickled in, and he watched as familiar faces filled the room. Friends, neighbors, and even some strangers gathered, their eyes full of curiosity. David took a deep breath, squeezing his hands together. Then, the moment came. The board members arrived, suit-clad and serious, walking in with an air of authority that made David's stomach twist. As they settled into their seats towards the front, his heart beat louder, each thud echoing fear and hope. When it was finally time for Ella to share, she stepped up to the makeshift stage and looked around at the audience. Her tiny hands trembled slightly as she held a drawing of a nest, branches cradling the home of a bird. "This is where I feel safe," she began, voice quivering. "Sometimes, it feels like there's no place for me, but in my art I can create a world where I belong." David's chest tightened as the words spilled out, bridging the gap between her fragile heart and the hardened expressions of the board members. He watched their reactions closely. Were they leaning in? Were those eyes starting to soften? After Ella, Frank shared his story raw and powerful. As each speaker took the stage, David felt the walls begin to crack. People were leaning in, nodding, listening. Then came the moment David took the stage. He held up a piece of Ella's artwork, a striking image that expressed her feelings of isolation. "You see this?" he asked, scanning the crowd. "This is what unseen truly looks like. This is what the heart of our community holds." The room buzzed. Some people were nodding, others fidgeting with emotion. David felt it, a shift, a connection. And just as the adrenaline began to fade, ready to settle into the relief of the moment, he heard an unexpected voice call out from the back. "What's next for them?" The board members leaned forward, their interest piqued. David's heart raced even faster, anxiety threatening to overtake him. This was it. Would they respond? Would they step forward to help, or would they just turn away? That question hung in the air, waiting for an answer that could change everything. The night was far from over, and David could feel the weight of the moment shift once more. The tension in the room was palpable. David looked up, scanning the faces of the board members. Their brows were furrowed, lips pursed. Had Ella's words struck a chord, or were they too far removed from the community to truly understand? He took a step closer to the audience, determined to keep the momentum. "This project isn't just about sharing stories," he implored, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "It's about creating a bridge between those who feel unseen and the world around them. If we don't act, these stories will be forgotten, left unheard." But who was he talking to? Did they really care? Just then, as if on cue, a small figure emerged at the edge of the crowd. A little girl, slightly older than Ella, with hair tousled and clothes tattered. David's breath hitched in his throat. There she was, stepping into the light that surrounded the gathering like a spotlight. "Can I say something?" she asked, her voice small but clear. The audience turned, surprise written on their faces. The board members exchanged glances, unsure how to respond. David stepped aside, motioning for her to take his place. "Go ahead," he encouraged, feeling a swell of hope. The girl took a deep breath, glancing at the drawing of the nest. I used to feel like I didn't belong anywhere. Like I was invisible. I thought no one could see me. But when I found a piece of paper, I started drawing. I drew what I wished I could be, like a bird flying free. She paused, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears, and continued. Then people started to notice. They started asking me about my drawings. That made me feel seen. David's heart swelled. Could this moment truly change them? The sincerity in her words carried weight, slipping beneath the layers of indifference. Art can save us, the girl said, her small fists clenching at her sides. Like the nest, we all just want a place to feel safe. To be heard. Something shifted in the room. David caught sight of a board member leaning forward, intrigued. Then he saw another, nodding slightly. Was it possible? Were they beginning to understand the urgency of this mission? The girl's voice rang out again. If we don't share our stories, how will anyone know how to help? Her honesty was a well of emotion that stirred the audience, igniting whispers, nods of agreement. When she finished, the room erupted into a quiet applause. It wasn't loud, but there was a ripple of acknowledgement that bridged the gap between the community and the board. David felt warmth spread through him. Perhaps this wasn't just about Ella or Frank, perhaps it was about a collective awakening. As the board members whispered among themselves, evaluating what they just witnessed, David couldn't shake the feeling that this had shifted something monumental. What if he thought? What if we could take this further? What if we could truly bring change? Just then, one of the board members stood. I'm intrigued, she said, eyes scanning the crowd. There's clearly a need for this kind of initiative in our community. But how do we make it sustainable? The question hung in the air, heavy with possibility. David realized this was exactly what they needed, a catalyst to spark conversations about support and resources. Ella, bold and bright, stepped forward again. We can do workshops. Create art that tells our stories. And build connections. Cheers erupted from the audience. David couldn't help but smile as the excitement surged, but deep down, he felt another wave of anxiety wash over him. What happens if we share these stories and the board doesn't fund us? He wondered. Would the voices start to fade again? As the discussions began swirling around him, David looked on, filled with equal parts hope and uncertainty. They were on the verge of something transformative. Yet, as the night carried on, he could feel something deeper, stirring questions about unforeseen consequences, and the weight of the path ahead. Could they navigate those waters without losing their course? It was a gamble, and the stakes were high. But there was one point that reverberated in his mind. An echo of the night resounding. What if this was just the beginning? The day of reckoning arrived like a powerful tidal wave crashing against jagged rocks. David stood outside the boardroom, heart pounding. Today, everything he fought for was on the line. All the stories, all the voices would soon face a final judgment. As he entered the room, the atmosphere thickened with gravity. Board members rifled through notes, pens poised, ready to dissect him. Their suits felt like armor, a barrier between compassion and cold, hard reason. David took a deep breath, recalling the warmth of Ella's smile, the strength of Frank's words, and the pain reflected in countless eager eyes. He couldn't back down now. Today, we're not here to debate numbers, he began, his voice unwavering. We're here because lives hang in the balance. Lives like Ella's and countless others who deserve a chance. He glanced down at the pictures littered across the table, drawings, smiles, and a tapestry of emotion woven through ink. They were reminders of what stood to be gained or lost. The board members exchanged glances, curiosity piqued, yet skepticism draped over their expressions like a dark shroud. What's the plan? Roberts, the stoic board member, leaned forward, gauging David's commitment. David lifted his chin, drawing strength from the stories that had erupted from his community. We propose creating programs that leverage art as a therapeutic tool for kids in shelters and lesser-funded programs. Let them express their suffering, but also their dreams. A ripple of murmurs swirled through the room. It's a luxury. Another board member scoffed. Is it? David snapped. If art can spark hope, it's not a luxury. It's a necessity. We owe it to these children to create a space where they can be seen and heard. We owe them our support. There it was, the intensity, the urgency. He could see a few board members' expressions visibly shift. They were listening. But how do we fund it? One asked. Where does the money come from? Increased community engagement and partnerships, David suggested, his mind racing. We can collaborate with local businesses, hold fundraisers, even set up outreach to invite donations. The community is ready to rally behind this cause. They just need to know we're on their side. He paused, giving his words time to settle. Imagine this, a community thriving, driven by purpose and love, not merely profit. Silence reigned, a palpable silence of contemplation. He seized the moment. We can also include workshops where children and families tell their stories, articulate their needs. The board would not just be observing, but participating in creating change. Slowly, a wave of understanding washed over the faces around the table. They were beginning to see the light, a flickering flame that ignited with empathy. What kind of stories? Robert's eyes hardened with curiosity. David felt a surge of assurance. Real stories. Stories like Ella's that resonate with so many. This is not just about us speaking for them. It's about letting them share their experiences. When we empower the unseen, they become our strongest advocates. He felt the energy shift in the room as board members silently exchanged glances again, murmurs gradually transforming into a buzz of excitement. Yes, David pushed on passionately, we build a bridge, a connection through real, honest face-to-face interaction. We can prove to the shareholders that investing in humanity breeds strong communities and thriving businesses alike. And just like that, they were off. David led them through potential budgets, strategies, and community outreach plans. Ideas flowed freely now, rolling off his tongue like vibrant paint across a canvas. He was finally seeing the board rise from their cold, corporate ambitions, embracing a new vision. After hours of dialogue, David's heart raced as the meeting drew to a close. He could see a potential resolution emerging, a tangible, heartfelt commitment to change. Let's take a vote, the chairperson finally announced, voice steady, yet echoing the weight of years of systemic indifference. All in favor of proposing this initiative? Fingers lifted. Hesitantly at first, then grew more confident, until every hand was raised, illuminating the room. David's breath caught even as he felt the emotion swell in his chest. They had done it. As they left the boardroom, David's heart overflowed with profound joy. They had catalyzed change. He thought of Ella, the countless children dreaming of a brighter future, and the ripple effect they could create. True transformation had taken root, and he was part of something monumental, but the truth echoed in him, this was just the beginning. His phone buzzed. It was Kevin. You did it. Not just me, David replied, his heart full. We did it. Together. The fight had been fierce, but it ignited a spark, a resolve. They wouldn't stop here. David envisioned the art workshops, the voices yet to be heard, and Lily's vibrant dreams weaving through it all. They were no longer invisible. And then, as hope spilled into the future, David realized he must share this victory, let their light shine bright. He felt a surge of urgency to spread the message about voices of the unseen, ignite new involvement in the community. Remember, he thought as he wrapped his arms around his family that evening, there are so many stories still waiting to be told. With the warmth of his kids sealed in an embrace, he swore he would never forget. Now it was time to let the world know that change was possible. They had lifted the veil, and he wouldn't wait not for one more second. It was time to take louder steps, to reach deeper roots, a call to action, and if you are inspired by David's journey, you need to subscribe now. Don't dare miss what's coming next. Join this movement of hope and change. Leave a like now to help our stories spread far and wide. Comment below to share your thoughts and feelings about this transformation. And don't wait not even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this. Only true fans understand how crucial your support is for our journey ahead.